Welcome back, Fantasy Islanders. You're sitting with the Fantasy Island crew. We're going to be talking about this year's midseason bums. We're sitting pretty at the midseason point, and we have tons of bums to go over today. We got Bombo, I'm Sweet Tea, and we're going to go ahead and get into this one. But before we do, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell if it tickles your fancy. If not, Bombo can go over there and tickle your fancy for you. He likes doing that. He's got a big feather, just saying, guys. Anyway, so without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into this midseason bums QB. And Bombo, we have a big name as a bum for the midseason QBs, and that is none other than Joe Burrow. And guys, okay, understand he got hurt. We know that he's hurt. He's out for the season as of the time of this recording. He had just gotten hurt. But up until that point, he really hasn't done much. The last couple games prior to getting hurt, he started looking better. He started looking like himself. But his numbers, Bombo, have not been stellar, to say the least. He is number 17 in the fantasy quarterback list right now. He has only had 2,300 yards passing, 15 tutties. Yes, that's nice and all. He's one of the top in the tutties, but overall, he is just not getting it done, and now he's out. So what do you think about that midseason performance by Joe Burrow, a guy that we've been so accustomed to being like one or two in the league when it comes to being a quarterback?
The issue with Burrow started in preseason when he had to be carted off for a calf injury. When he had to be carted off with a calf injury, started the season playing through it and not clicking at all in that offense. Then there was what we thought was the resurgence of the Bengals for like a 2-week span, and now we have Burrow down for the year. Let's just start off by saying to you, like, hey, wish him all the best. Hope he comes back and balls out for fantasy manager starting next year. But busted wrist on the throwing hand means we're not seeing Burrow for the rest of the year. And going forward, I'm not sure about all the rest of the weapons in Cincinnati because his backup did not look too good. And we on the island like to tell you how all these moves are going to affect the rest of your season. It's going to look bad for all of you Cincinnati stockholders. Sorry.
I'm crying, Bombo, because I have Jamar Chase and he only got me 10 points.
Hey, we hope elite talent shines through. We hope that we never really had a chance to see if Jamar Chase is what we like to call quarterback proof. Hey, for your sake, T, I'm optimistic that he can become quarterback proof. But what we saw this last week, it may just be their backup wasn't prepared to come in, and we'll see what happens after a week of the starters.
Well, I appreciate the pity there, Bombo. All right. So that's going to lead us into our number 2 bum at the midseason mark when it comes to quarterbacks. This one hurts me. This one hurts me, cuts me deep because I'm a big fan of him. Bombo, I know you're a big fan of him, but I also have a lot of stake in this guy, not in fantasy, but I have a lot of stake in this guy just in reality because I'm a sad Bears fan, and that's Justin Fields. Justin Fields is not having a great season. The reason why he's on this bum list, yes, it's year 3 only, but at the same time, this was the year he was going to make that leap. This is the year that they went and got some weapons around him. They tried to upgrade that O-line. Now that O-line has struggled because of injuries. So that O-line has not helped him. And then he got hurt. He's going to be coming back this week, but he's still number 24 on the quarterbacks list of PPR points. He has not really done much. He has flashes, he has games, but it's painful to watch. What do you think there, Bombo? Do you think that's justified to call him out for a bum, even though, the struggles with that bad coaching, bad OC? What do you think?
Anybody can get on this list, T, and Justin Fields is on this list. Most so I'm right there with you. I believe in Justin Fields' talent, and I also believe that right now, because of where the Bears like this plethora of first round picks that they're going to be getting next year, Justin Fields is auditioning for his job every week. And if he's healthy, he's going to take the field for the Bears. And hopefully he's a gamer enough that he's putting up like good performances, regardless of what he thinks his future will be with the Bears. Because if he gets moved from the Bears, he's not Trey Lance. He's not going to go to a team and hold the clipboard. As a Raider fan, I'll take Justin Fields right now as my quarterback, as my starting quarterback, starting tomorrow. I would take Justin Fields as my quarterback and build around him. But if the Bears don't feel that, it's a business. The thing is with Justin Fields and why he makes this list is Justin Fields breakout games this year have also been DJ Moore's breakout games this year. And I know you, me, King have been saying that DJ Moore is quarterback proof. So is Justin Fields baller performances as a passer because DJ Moore is that good of a receiver? I don't know, but that's why he makes this list because it's just so many question marks around Justin Fields. And he was being drafted as a guy that you can just put in your lineup and he'll get you 30 every game.
Yeah, fair point. But a counterpoint to that is same could be said about Jalen Hurts, about Josh Allen. All these guys kind of
Mhm.
took that leap when they got that stud number one, clear cut number one wide receiver. You know, DJ Moore is that guy. Some people argue, well, I don't know, is he a number one? No, he is. And he's proven it. He's taken some big, big throws to the house. I mean, this guy is just amazing to watch. But to your point, though, it's a little bit painful to watch Justin Fields at the moment. He does have those baller games, but he has made this bums list, and it's unfortunate. It hurts. It's painful, but hey, that's what we're here for, right? We got to call it out. We got to call no matter what. Anybody could get got at any time. And so I'm going to go, and that's going to lead us into our number 3 quarterback on this bums list, rounding out this part, and it's going to be the number 1 overall draft pick in that draft. That's Mr. Trevor Lawrence. Mr. Trevor Lawrence. A lot of people are going to say, how the hell do you got Trevor Lawrence on this bums list? Well, guess what? He's number 18 overall in fantasy points for quarterbacks. He's behind Baker Mayfield. He's behind Jordan Love. He's behind Brock Purdy. This guy is supposed to be the next coming of Jesus. That's why he has his hair the way that he does. He's supposed to be the next coming of Jesus. I mean, come on. When everybody talks about Trevor Lawrence, everybody is sucking that dude's cat. And I get it. He's smart, he's talented, he's good with that football. He makes the team better, but this season has been a tough season for him. He is definitely struggling. He has 2,100 yards passing, 300 attempts. He's only got 9 touchdowns. And he doesn't really run that much, but he's got 223 yards rushing. But he's just not getting it done. I mean, honestly, he's one tick above Derek Carr right now, who by all means, Derek Carr is not having what a Derek Carr season because you and I are a lot higher on Derek Carr. Derek Carr is better than what the season he's currently having, but we didn't expect too much out of him. That's why Trevor Lawrence makes this list. What do you think, Bombo? Or am I out of pocket or do you think it's justified?
Definitely not out of pocket. Speaking from a fantasy sense, because the Jags are winning games. I mean, they got smashed by San Francisco a couple weeks ago, but I mean, it's San Francisco. The Jags are improved on the defensive side. They have weapons on the offensive side, but it does come down to Trevor Lawrence has not taken the next step because the Trevor Lawrence experience was supposed to be elevated once he got Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and a workhorse like Travis Etienne. All they need now is for Trevor Lawrence to feature all those guys and make them all fantasy studs. And what we've seen is Christian Kirk gets his, Evan Ingram gets, his catches and targets. Etienne, that we've already talked about, he's, in a class of his own as far as running backs. But Trevor Lawrence has not taken that fantasy step forward. I don't think the Jags are worried about Trevor Lawrence performing for your fantasy team. They're trying to win games and trying to win this division. But we all expect a lot more out of Trevor Lawrence because the talent's there. I said it once, I'll say it again. Trevor Lawrence should have the Jags on TV every week. He should be in commercials. He should be a household name. But until he starts putting up huge numbers, he's just going to be a small market quarterback with a big arm.
Oh, shots fired. But you know what? Facts. Facts. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get into our running back bums. Now, my face is kind of smiling, but I'm kind of torn a little bit when I'm looking at this name because, quite honestly, Bombo, you and I were hype on this guy just fantasy wise away from the show. You and I were kind of like geeking out over him, talking about him, saying that, this guy, he needs the pub. He needs to get that recognition. He needs to be able to get that chance. Well, guess what? He's getting that chance and he's fucking shitting the bed. And who is this? Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard is shitting the bed in fantasy when it comes to running back this year. This is the first year that he's without Zeke. This is his time to shine. This is his time to show what he can do. And what is he? He's number 20 in PPR points when it comes to running backs. That is not good. And he's played 9 games. He's not hurt. He's not playing, banged up. Well, everybody is, but to kind of level the playing field with everybody, he's not. He only has 529 yards. What in the world is that? 529. When you got a guy like CMC at this point, same point, with 747. And I'm talking rushing, not all purpose, just rushing, pure rushing yards. He can't even touch anybody. He's barely in the top 20 at the very last position. And the only reason why I'm smiling is because I'm not a Cowboy fan and I freaking hate the cockiness and the arrogance of Cowboy fans. But from a fantasy standpoint, you and I, Bombo, both said before about this guy, all he needs is his shot because he is the number one back over there. And with Zeke now finally gone, he's not showing it. He's not doing it. So he makes the number one running back bum on this list. At least that's my rant. That's what I feel. What do you think?
Great rant. And then one key that stood out in that rant was the word healthy. Tony Pollard is 100% healthy. There are other guys that we're going to go over that are on this bums list where you can say, hey, they're coming from injury. They're coming off of an injury. An injury has derailed their season and they're trying to work their way back in. Tony Pollard has been 100. The Cowboys have been 100% healthy all year. Cowboys have been balling out ever since their bye. If you listen to the show, we've been telling you. Cowboys, our offense is rolling, except for the one bad wheel, that one Walmart cart wheel, which is Tony Pollard. And the sad part about it is where you drafted him. And when I say you, I'm pointing right at all of you Tony Pollard truthers that were like T and I. The issue is the Cowboys are using Tony Pollard like he's Zeke instead of using him like he's Tony Pollard. And Tony Pollard does not need to be taking it between the tackles, following that guard for those hard 3-yard gains for first downs. Tony Pollard needs to be used in space. The problem is they don't really need to do that because CeeDee Lamb is crazy open down the field. Dak is now trying to play for his job and throw it down the field, and he's doing a really good job of it. So Tony Pollard is getting game scripted out of his own offense. And if they're not going to throw to Tony Pollard in the flats or at least manufacture ways to get him the ball in space because other people are doing so well at that, then sorry to tell you, he's not an RB1 anymore. He's not the guy that you drafted in August. And we've been telling you for at least for the past 3 weeks, you should be trying to package Tony Pollard to get him off your team. We're going to say it one more time because trade deadlines are coming up. If you can get Tony Pollard, if you can get value for Tony Pollard in a trade him to that Cowboys fan, trade him to that guy that thinks like T and I, that we're hoping that this dude is a 25-point game in a heartbeat off of 2 plays. But right now, just if you're following the trend of what's going on with the Cowboys, it's not looking good for Tony Pollard. In fact, there's rumblings of maybe a committee approach going forward with Rico Dowdle. So I try to get everything I can for him. Just temper your expectations because he's no longer the 3rd best running back. And like we've said in the show before, starting running back for the Cowboys isn't a measurable stat.
Preach, brother, preach. I love it. You're absolutely right. 100%. Tony Pollard is just so disappointing. That's what makes him number 1 on this bums list.
Yeah.
All right. So number 2 on this bums list for running backs is Mr. Holdout, Mr. Giants, and that's Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is sitting at number 24 in running backs in PPR. He is not having a Saquon Barkley type of year, and he's healthy. He's a little dinged up because he's the only part of that offense, but he's relatively healthy. It's not like the Saquon Barkley in the past where he's missed, he played 3 games and missed the rest of the season. No. He's not trying to come back from some kind of high ankle sprain or anything like that. Like Saquon is relatively healthy right now, but this is a far, far stretch from what happened last year when you saw Saquon become the guy that they thought he was going to be out of the gate his rookie year. And, it just never happened because every single year he got hurt. So To see that, to see him trying to hold out for all kinds of money saying, "I'm worth it," and then to come back with a performance like this, I don't put it on him 100% just because that whole entire team around him is dog shit, but still, you know what you were coming back to. You know what the situation is. You got a great head coach and nothing else. Saquon is the whole offense, and he only has 568 yards rushing and 1 tutty. That's sad. I just don't know what to say anymore beyond that. What do you think, Bombo?
I'm gonna preface it with Saquon was hurt. He did miss 3 games with an ankle sprain, but let's get that out of the way. Like you said, T, he's healthy now. And he got healthy at the same time that the rest of the Giants team took a nosedive. And they're putting DeVito out there. Stop me if you heard this before. Tyrod Taylor comes in, looks good for 2 quarters, and then has a devastating injury where he needs to go to the hospital. I feel like that happens every year.
Every time he hits the
Um,
field.
Every time, yeah. So the reasons why you weren't drafting Saquon super high in the first round are the reasons why he's on this list. Because he's the best player on a bum offense with a bum quarterback with the too many question marks everywhere else on the field. The only thing, because I'm a Saquon owner, I have Saquon in a keeper league, and the one thing that put him over the hump for me with keeping him was Waller was going to get there, and I believe that Waller was going to be a part of this offense. That went south. For a second there, he looked good with Tyrod Taylor, but Danny Dimes was never really doing anything to improve the offense. Waller never came in and did anything for the offense. So you got 11 guys on the other side of the ball just watching Saquon Barkley get a handoff and get stuffed after 2 yards. The only thing that's for anyone that has any stock in Saquon is he's going to get that volume. And the one thing that I will say that could probably help him, Dable was putting him in the Wildcat and giving him direct snaps so that they can maximize their makeshift duct tape together offensive line. But other than that, Saquon is just going to be a all world talent stuck on a bad team that's not going to produce for your fantasy team. Trade him if you can.
Oh, for sure. But let me say, when I say that he's been relatively healthy, he's played 7 games. Giants have already had their bye
Yeah.
week. He's played 7. That means he was only unavailable for 2 games. All right. Now, who has played 7 games that is light years ahead of him? I'm just going to throw this out there. Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is almost a full 10. He's 9 fantasy points, almost a full 10 fantasy points above Saquon. And he has played the exact same amount of games. So that's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to get my point across is that, Saquon, it's not like it's the opposite where Saquon has only played 3 games. This guy's played 7 games and he is not performing. And I get it. You're right. It's that offense. I get it. You got nobody else but him. But at the same time, if it's just a steady dose of him, he should be able to do something more than what he's doing. So I don't know what's going on
Yeah.
over there. It's painful to watch as somebody who is rooting for Saquon in fantasy, even though I don't have any stock in him. I know others do. All right. So our last guy, shadow of himself, another freaking holdout when it comes to the running back position. Another guy that was talking about money. And I mean, Bombo, you and I know we've been hyped on this guy. We had him last year in a fantasy league that you and I were both co-managers of, and we were balling with this guy, ride or die, and he was just getting us mad fantasy points. For 2 years straight, he has been solid fantasy RB1, and all of a sudden he's fallen off. Where did this guy go? What the hell happened to this guy? Now, granted, he's been hurt. He's only played 6 games. But that being said, he still does not have a lot of points or yards. And that's Austin Eckler of the Los Angeles Chargers. This year so far, by mid-year, this guy only has 332 yards and 4 tutties. That is not like him. This is nothing like what we've seen over the past 2 prior years of Austin Eckler and just balling out fantasy-wise. Because he's coming out of the backfield, he's catching, he's all world for them. He is everything that they need. He is like the ultimate. And this year, nothing. Crickets. Bum. Am I off? Should I temper my expectations, given that this guy was like one of the top guys overall in the league? in fantasy points, 2 years running. And now what the hell happened to him?
Well, T, you hit all the crucial talking points right there. Where he was drafted, what he's been doing, his antics in the offseason as far as openly demanding a trade. Uh, and it goes back to what we were talking about in an earlier segment. Are these Chargers? I mean, I know that everyone wants to make the Chargers a thing because Eckler and Herbert's arm and all that, but they're just a mid team, a mid organization with a bad coach. And everything you said about Eckler is 100% true. So on the island, we let you know what your options are. Your options right now, take advantage of that trade deadline and move him off of your roster and get a haul for him based off of his name. And going forward, I honestly, T, I want to see a team like, hear me out. Eckler gets what he wants. He gets out of SoFi and he gets on another team. Eckler on a healthy Bengals team, like something like that, maybe. Where, hey, I hate to throw it out there, but you know, uh, Pacheco is a 6th round guy, but Eckler on the Chiefs, if they were to throw some money at him and invest in that position, we wouldn't even be talking about that. We'd be talking about this guy breaking records. And I think the organization's holding him back. And he's also, if you watch Charger games, which being in the Los Angeles area, we get to see Charger games. I see a lot of Austin Eckler not running as hard. And it may just because they're trying to overcomplicate that offense. Even if he's not getting the passes in the flat, Austin Eckler should be getting 30 carries a game, especially if your quarterback has a broken hand. And they're just not doing that. So shoot yourselves in the foot. Everyone that suffers for it are Charger fans and Austin Eckler owners.
No, straight up, you're absolutely right. It's one of those things that it's kind of hard to see him fall so much from where he's been fantasy wise. And to see that, it's just really, really tough for me. So that's why he makes our bums list. Like Bombo always says, anybody could get it. Anybody can get on this list, period. All right, Bombo, we're going to go ahead and go into our wide receiver bums for the midseason. Ooh, this list has some names. I'm shocked at some of these names, to be perfectly honest with you. I never thought I'd be saying the likes of our number one guy on here, and that's DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is sitting at number 39 in PPR points for wide receivers. 39. Let that sink in, guys. It's DK Metcalf. You took him number one overall. And if you're in a keeper league, you kept him. You know you did because Geno Smith was feeding him the rock last year, and he had himself a year when nobody expected him to really do much with, let's be honest, Geno Smith throwing the ball. But now, yes, Geno Smith is kind of come down to earth when it comes to fantasy points, but they're still solid, and Geno's still throwing that ball. And DK is not performing. Only 552 yards in the air and only 2 tutties. That, guys, is nothing. He is not performing to the DK Metcalf that we think. DK is just, I don't know. I don't know what's the problem over there, but it's just really hard for me, Bombo. What do you think? Because this one's a tough one.
It is a tough one, and some of it is to be blamed on Geno Smith. See, here's the thing. The thing that makes Geno Smith a good quarterback is what's going to hold DK Metcalf back. Geno Smith is not a risk taker. Geno Smith done with throwing a ton of picks. He doesn't want to do that. It's the reason why we all forgot about who he was to begin with because he would turn the ball over. So as he becomes a more efficient quarterback, he's going to go with the safer options. And the safer options are the guys that run better routes. On that team, it's Tyler Lockett and JSN. Those guys just run better routes. And they take the pressure off the quarterback by trying to run the ball as much as possible. DK Metcalf needs to be with a gunslinger, someone that's not afraid to just throw it up there and let DK Metcalf make the play, even when he's not open. And that's just not going to happen in this offense. And we're finally seeing it right now. Uh, it's one of those things where if you were to ask the Seahawks in that organization where they want to go, if they want to stick with Geno Smith or go with DK Metcalf, they're probably going to roll with DK Metcalf. So if they take an epic nosedive to end the season, I think the Geno Smith era in Seattle is over and they look towards the future. The future is utilizing all their weapons with probably a bigger arm at quarterback.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I think I'm finally seeing DK this year be what I thought he would be last year. Because last year with Geno emerging and surprising the world, I thought that wouldn't happen, and I thought DK, you would see his numbers regress, and I think it just took a year, and now we're seeing it. But it's still sad to see.
Yeah.
Still sad to see. All right, next guy on the block. I gotta say this, Bombo, before we get into this guy. This guy was out of the league for 2 years, one for mental health and one because he was suspended. Now, that being said, he was gone for 2 years. So we didn't expect a ton of him coming back, but he was all world before he left. He was considered at one point to arguably, you could have made the argument that he was probably the number one receiver at the time when he left the league. And that's Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley got traded away from Atlanta and now he's in Jacksonville, and everybody expected him to blow up this year, especially you had Trevor Lawrence, you have a great offensive guru head coach. I mean, all the pieces are there for him to be just Calvin Ridley again. I'm hoping the reason why he's on this list is because he's still trying to get his legs. He's still trying to get accustomed. The game has changed a little bit in the last 2 years. Just all those types of things. I think he's just trying to find his way. So I'm really hoping that next year he comes back strong. But Calvin Ridley has not been well this year. He's number 43 on wide receiver PPR. He only has 471 yards in the air and 2 tutties. He is just not doing well. He's only got 95 points. That's it. He's not even in triple digits right now. He's got less than 100 fantasy points. That is not what we expected out of Calvin Ridley, Bombo. I don't know. What do you think? I'm struggling with this one because I don't want him on this list knowing his history, but at the same time, we got to call him out.
100%. The island was super high on Calvin Ridley going into the season. And then week one, he proved us right. In week one, he balled out. Let me start off by saying this, T. He's the best receiver on the Jags, but I would rather have Christian Kirk just because teams have figured out that with Calvin Ridley, if you play man on him and bump him at the line, you disrupt his route running, and it's become obvious. He doesn't get targeted. Trevor Lawrence, and it goes hand in hand with Trevor Lawrence's schedule. It goes hand in hand with Trevor Lawrence's struggles. If Trevor Lawrence does not see his first read open immediately, one of the good things about Trevor Lawrence is he immediately goes to the next one. He's a manufactured quarterback. Dude came out of a lab mentally, right? So he immediately goes to that second read, which is Christian Kirk. And if Christian Kirk is the first read on certain plays, then it's even more going to pile up against Calvin Ridley. So everything that you hit on, there's still things like what's so frustrating is we think Calvin Ridley's good enough to get over these humps, to get over these roadblocks of beating man coverage and being an awesome second option, but it's just not happening for him right now. And glasses half full approach to this is Calvin Ridley gets this whole season under him and comes out balling next year. And we see what we think he's going to be starting next year. But as of right now, it looks like a wasted year. And for people who are drafting him in the second and third round as being that dude, they're probably not even starting him at this point. Hopefully they moved him because right now he's at his lowest value. Like you were saying, he's not even in triple digits as a quote unquote number one wide receiver, not getting the catches, not getting the touchdowns. So you're not going to get too much in return for him.
The argument could be said that, Christian Kirk and Trevor Lawrence have more chemistry because of last year together,
Mhm.
which is valid. But when you got a talent like Calvin Ridley coming in, you expect a lot more. You expect faster chemistry and everything, and you're just not seeing it. And it's kind of sad. So let's hope that 2024 season is going to be a much better season, fantasy wise and just professional football wise, in reality. So that leads us to our number 3 on this list, our last receiver on the bums list for midseason. This guy is going to be surprising to some, but I think you and I both have been kind of commenting about this guy just, you know, off show, off air. And it's not really surprising for us. And that's Debo Samuels, guys. Debo Samuels of the San Francisco 49ers. Yes, there's a lot of hype around him every single year. But let's remember the hype was around him when Jimmy G was the quarterback. Ever since Purdy took over that role, you do not see or hear a lot about Debo Samuels. Debo Samuels is number 49 out of 50 top receivers. And I say top, but it's not, that's not a
Yeah.
compliment. But out of the top 50, he's number 49. He only has 332 yards and one tutty. He has 87 fantasy points on the season. Guys, come on. That is not stellar. And if you drafted him or you kept him and you're thinking you're going to have a hell of a wide receiver in your lineup, just what Bombo said about Calvin Ridley is true about Debo Samuels. There's a strong chance right now you're listening to us and you're saying, well, hell, I don't even have him in my starting lineup. I can't even trust him to be in my starting lineup right now. And there's no trade value. Unless there's like what Bombo always says, unless you got somebody who is a huge fan of that team and or just chases names or both. That's the only value you're going to get for him. But Bombo, I don't know. Am I far off in thinking this? Because I'm just thinking that the chemistry between him and Purdy isn't there. But am I off or what do you think? Is it something else?
There is it's not something else. In fact, in our fantasy fool's gold bit that we did earlier in the season, I went out there and told everybody the fact that Debo Samuel was getting drafted rounds ahead of Brandon Ayuk is crazy to me because Debo Samuel is a awesome football player. He's an awesome athlete. Probably besides Christian McCaffrey, one of the best athletes that San Francisco has, but that doesn't make him a top receiver. Brandon Ayuk is the better receiver. And Debo Samuel has 24 catches on the year. Ayuk leads the team in targets, air yards, all of the measurables of a number one wide receiver. And everyone, I don't know why, was drafting Debo like he was the number one wide receiver, number one wide receiver in this San Francisco offense. He isn't. He's a gadget guy. He's a gamer. He'll get you. So here's the thing: a Debo Samuel, jet sweep for 20 yard in the red zone that gets you a touchdown is 20 yards plus the 6. So that's 8 fantasy points. You could put on a couple of catches on there, and there's your Debo Samuel getting you 10 to 12. Whereas Ayuk is getting no touchdowns, but getting 10 catches for 160 yards. Debo Samuel is the guy that they want to show on highlights. He's the guy that we see scoring the touchdowns on the jet sweeps, stuff like that. But it doesn't mean he's the better fantasy option. We tried to tell you earlier in the year, he's good to have on your team as a piece, but he's not going to be that stud wide receiver. And we don't want to go back in time. But if you look at your draft, here's your Fantasy Island challenge for the day. Go to your app, look at the receivers that were drafted after Debo, and then kick yourself in the ass and come back and talk to us.
Racket. I love it. Kick yourself
Yeah.
in the ass. Absolutely. You're right, though. I mean, we called this out. You called this out. I mean, this was just one of those ones that we were very just not high on at all, But like I said, it's no surprise to us, but to many guys out there right now, this has just been a hard pill to swallow and a hard lesson learned with him. So, yeah, that's going to go ahead and wrap our receiver bums up. And that's going to lead us to our tight ends. Now, guys, the tight end list, we could talk about it for days. We love to make fun of the tight ends, but let's kind of just say this. There's 3 guys on this list that justifiably need to be on this list. All the other tight ends, we can make an argument. Well, the position, they're serviceable. They're never been that big of a name, all that type of thing. But these 3 names on here, these guys aren't bums. These guys have either shown flashes that they can be something or were expected to be something, and they just never panned out. Right or wrong, maybe their fault, maybe not, but they're on this list, and that's tough. So number 1 on this list, I've never been high on him, but the entire NFL and fantasy world have been huge on this guy, sucking this guy's gack out of college. He has gotten so much pub and has done absolutely nothing whatsoever. And yet Bombo can attest to this. I can attest to this. Every single season since this guy's been in the league, he has been drafted high when it comes to tight ends for whatever reason. He's got a name and it's not deserved, and that is Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. I'm sorry. I can't sit there and recommend this guy. I never call him out to say, you got to draft this guy. I never call him out and say, you got to start this guy. Kyle Pitts is trash to me when it comes to tight ends. And he could be a great guy just in real life, but fantasy wise, it's not. And to me personally, Bombo, and I don't think it's really him. I think it's bad coaching situation. I think it's the fact that he's got nobody throwing him the ball because he's got a bum for a freaking quarterback over there. That hasn't panned out. Who else did he have? He had Matt Ryan at the end of his career when his freaking arm was rubber. Well, what do you got thrown to you? So as a tight end, what are you going to do? You can't do much. And so I think it's just been a series of unfortunate events for him. He's got potential, but Kyle Pitts has not shown anything this year. And when it comes to it, he's number 16 on this list. And considering where he was drafted, it's bad. So he's only got 82 points on the fantasy points on the year. I don't know, Wombo. Am I off? Am I just going off? I feel like I'm being negative on the guy, but everybody's always so high on him. What do you think?
I think you went off further on Kyle Pitts, and I'm the guy that's owned him for a couple years in multiple leagues. And nothing that you said is wrong. It's a bad situation. It's a bad offense. But pretty soon we're going to have to start looking at Kyle Pitts and start thinking OJ Howard or Jermaine Grisham, like some of these guys that were supposed to be all world talents because they were that hybrid big wide receiver / converted tight end, always can get open across the seams. And the thing is, he's now leaning more towards those bus names that I just mentioned instead of being the next Travis Kelsey. I think that Atlanta was trying to get ahead of the curve and get themselves a matchup problem when they drafted Kyle Pitts as high as he went. The reality is maybe he shouldn't have got drafted in that position. Maybe he isn't an all-world athletic talent. And maybe he is athletic, but it's not translating on the football field. And he's kind of getting scripted out of his own offense right now because we were talking about it in pre-show. Does Atlanta want to run the ball or do they have to run the ball with Desmond Ridder at quarterback? And I think it's a combination of both, leaning more towards they have to run the ball. And Kyle Pitts just isn't a fantastic run blocker. So if he's being asked to block or be a decoy, it's just not going to translate well. The positive side about this Kyle Pitts, especially him making this list and getting bashed on our show, is he'll probably next year start getting drafted where he should get drafted. And if anything, worst case scenario, he might start becoming a streamer tight end going forward.
Yeah, it's a good point. One of the things that kind of stood out when you say a guy like OJ Howard, the other guy that kind of came to mind immediately was like a Noah Fant too. Big body,
Yeah.
a lot of upside. Everybody was talking and
First
hyping him
round
up.
pick.
First round
Mhm.
pick, and just did nothing. And we thought, oh, maybe it was Denver, maybe it was their situation over there. But he went to Seattle. He had a small little flash and then nothing. You don't hear about
That's
him
it.
anymore. So that kind of came to mind when you said that, and you're right.
Yep.
All right, the next guy on the list, some can make an argument saying, okay, well, he wasn't expected to do much. He's this and that. But a guy like Mike Gesicki, he came from Miami. He was actually pretty solid when it comes to the tight end position in Miami. And he goes to a situation where we thought was going to be a little bit good for him because he's going to New England. New England wasn't great, but you know what? They went out and they fixed, or they thought they did. We all thought they did at the beginning of the year. They fixed the OC situation and that it's going to be a much better year for him. And they still don't have receivers. And we figured, okay, Gasecki's going to work his way into that offense. But though so far this year, he's at number 28 in total tight ends, 182 yards, one tutty, and 45 freaking fantasy points. That's it. Gesicki has not panned out to what everybody, myself included, because I threw it out there in the preseason shows. I'm going to call myself out. And I said, this guy's going to have a better season than most people think just because he's in a better situation where he's going to be able to get catches. He's going to be able to get the ball. And that hasn't happened. They've struggled offensively. I understand that, but no excuses. It just hasn't happened. And you know what, Bumble, you can call me out for that one. You could say, you know what, hey, you put your coconuts out there and it didn't work, and you're right. You would be right to say that. So, you know, I'm giving you that that chance to throw it in my face. So go for it.
Yo, whoa. No, you have your ammo. You have your reasons to believe Gesicki. So let's go. Let me just sum all this up with something I like to call BBS, and that's Brady breakup syndrome. everyone that was involved with the success of Brady, everybody wanted to think, oh, Brady was one part of this in like this crazy system, and Gasecki and Hunter Henry with Bill O'Brien is going to be Aaron Hernandez and Gronk all over again. It's time to get to the facts. Brady made that happen. Brady is the reason why the Pats have balled out, why undersized receivers for no money won Super Bowls. And we looked at the Patriots offense going into the season with Juju and Gasecki and Hunter Henry being like, oh, that's Edelman, Hernandez, and Gronk with Bill O'Brien calling the plays. It's none of that because they got Mac Jones throwing the ball. I'm going to say Gasecki makes this list because he's in a bad offense with a bad offensive coordinator and a bad quarterback. There's nothing you can do. As far as Gasecki, the talent, we brought it up before, T. If you took Gasecki right now and put him on the Bengals, boom, right? If Gasecki, and even though Ferguson is doing well for Dallas, if Gasecki was the starting tight end for the Dallas Cowboys,
Oh,
boom, we
boom.
wouldn't even be talking about this guy like that. This
Mhm.
guy would be a fantasy darling. And honestly, Gasecki could replace some of the other guys on this list. Like I would think Gasecki in Atlanta does better than Kyle Pitts, but you're not 100% wrong or throwing your coconuts out there for thinking he was going to do it. Um, Now that I think about it, Gasecki on the Dolphins, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true, that's true.
yeah, I don't. Yeah, now that in hindsight, hopefully everybody's thinking about that. But he's now turned into a guy that's not even on fantasy rosters. It was a bad move on his part to go there. It's a bad move on our part for thinking he was going to be there and improve that offense in any way. Patriots are abysmal. Gasecki is included in that.
Yeah. I just you know what? I'm gonna call myself out on that one, and hey, you know what? I'll take the L. I'll take the L. Alright, that's gonna go into our last bum of the tight ends and of the segment, and that is Dallas Goddard of the Philadelphia Eagles. And guys, why is he on this list? Because you know what? Dallas Goddard is supposed to be that guy. They got rid of Zach Ertz because Goddard was supposed to be that guy. And what has he done? He hasn't done much. He's played 9 games this year. That means he's relatively healthy. Right now, he's a little banged up. We understand that. He's doubtful, listed last time we heard before their next matchup, but he's on a high flying offense. This offense, I mean, everybody that is in that offense gets points. Everybody. But Goddard doesn't seem to. He's only got 410 yards on the season, 2 tutties, and 91 fantasy points. He is not having the type of season that anybody expected. And you know as well as I do, Bombo, that a lot of guys went out and reached for him at tight end because they figured, okay, this Philly offense, this guy, he's supposed to be that tight end. He was being spoken in the sense of a Travis Kelsey type of guy. He was held in those regards and around a lot of fantasy circles as a tight end that could compete fantasy point wise with a Kelsey, with an Andrews. That was the kind of guy that he was, and he's not, and he hasn't been. And this has been a very disappointing season. What do you think?
We say it on the show all the time, follow the money. And Dallas Goddard got the bag in the offseason. We were thinking he was going to be a key cog in this high powered offense. The reality with the Eagles, as much as they're winning regular season games and as much as AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts are balling out, it doesn't seem like multiple guys on that offense can ball out at the same time. So Goddard actually had his one ball out game, went over 100 yards, bunch of catches, some touchdowns, while everybody else got scraps. But when it comes down to it, he's the odd man out in this offense when it comes to Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, DeAndre Swift, and Jalen Hurts. Dallas Goddard he's a better football player than a fantasy player this year. He does his job at tight end as far as drawing the safety and drawing that coverage linebacker away from the receivers, and he does a good job blocking. But you're right. Everyone that drafted him thinking they were getting a mini Hawkinson or they were getting a mini Andrews, they're getting a Jag, man. He's just a guy. He's just a tight end right now. And interesting, they didn't put him on IR. He is fighting through, I think, a broken arm or a fractured bone somewhere in his arm.
It's a
So
fractured
I don't
bone
think it's going to
somewhere.
get, yeah, it's not going to get better for him. Maybe by the time he does ball out, you're probably already out of the playoff hunt and just watching other teams in your league play each other. So yeah, Goddard has to make the list, unfortunately.
You know what? And before we wrap this whole segment up, I want to say this, Bombo. One guy that I've said both on the show and just privately, just amongst the kind of conversations that we have, I've always been high on this guy, and everybody would tell me, "You know what? He's just a product of the system." And I kept saying, "I bet you he's not." Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz
Mhm.
is on a not that great team. Houston, I mean, let's be honest, right? So they're up and coming. I mean, they got their QB, right? They got that position right. CJ Stroud is just
Yeah,
balling. But
yeah.
think about this. Dalton Schultz is just sitting out of the top 5, just sitting out, and he's not on a sexy team. And then you got a guy like Dallas Goddard, who is on a high flying offense, and he can't get those types of points. So what does that say? I'm just trying to illustrate the point that you got a guy like Schultz who went from a high flying offense, and everybody was saying, well, that's the only reason why he gets his numbers. Now he's not, and he's still getting those numbers. And then you got like a guy like Goddard who was supposed to be getting those numbers, who was spoken in high regards, higher than Schultz regards, and not doing that. So just kind of
Yeah.
illustrating the point there, just kind of like a little jab, little just digging it in even further.
It's a great point to you because when it comes down to it, Dallas Goddard is not needed in shootouts because Philly's either winning by a mile and just protecting the lead, or they're having to rely like if the big plays are just coming from somebody else. If Goddard played for a worse team, I think his numbers would be better.
Probably, probably.
Mhm.
Actually, that's a good point. All right, so that's going to go ahead and wrap up our mid-season bums for this year so far. Hopefully you don't have many of these guys on your roster, and if your roster is loaded with a bunch of these guys, that means sucks to be you, bro. Anyway, so for the guys in the Fantasy Island crew, for Bombo, I'm Sweet Tea, and we are out.